Record. Looks like we're good to go. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our brown bag lunch today. I am Julie Stewart. I'm the interim OLLI program coordinator. It's always a mouthful, but I'm here to sort of open up our brown bag today with our Osher Lifelong Learning Institute short little presentation so everyone has information on the OLLI program. Then I'll hand it off to Jane Woodward, who's going to introduce our speaker, Jazz, today. So first, before we get started, I want to make sure that we do our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Cal Poly Humboldt is located on the unceded lands of the Wiyot people. Arcata is known as Gudini, meaning over the woods or among the redwoods. We honor them and all neighboring tribes by our ongoing commitment to developing trusting, reciprocal, and long-lasting partnerships. So OLLI, most of you know, learning should never end. OLLI creates opportunities for academic engagement, civil involvement, personal growth, and fun. By offering a myriad of classes and experiences for a vibrant community of learners aged 50 and better, OLLI delivers learning for a lifetime. If you become a member with OLLI, some of you might already be, but you do get other benefits besides just attending classes. You also get student discounts at different restaurants and businesses in town, just like any other undergraduate student. And you pay less for every class you sign up for than someone who's not a member. So it's definitely a good thing to consider doing if you're interested in going to our classes that aren't our free offerings, like the brown bag. And starting July 1st is when, well, actually June 30th is when our current memberships end. And then starting July 1st is when that new year begins. So start thinking about if you're going to renew your membership for July or if you want to become a new member. You can become a new member at any time though, but you get the most bang for your buck if you do it in July, because then you have options for every class that we offer. So here's some of those discounts. Discount to the Jack Pass. You could be eligible for some course scholarships. You could participate in special interest groups. We have like a book club that goes on that is more consistent than just the shorter classes that we offer. You can also have access to our library, which is more than just renting books. It's also having access to different classes that take place there.
And you get an invitation to the brown bag lunches every week.
Yes.
And the OLLI newsletter comes out every week.
You're more in the know, that's for sure. And here's another thing that you have the opportunity to do would be the OLLI online conversations called Let's Connect. So this is a free weekly chat over Zoom. It takes place on Fridays from 10 to 11. This is something that began during the COVID pandemic and the lockdown, a way for people to continuously check in and talk and be able to connect with each other. And it had really positive responses that we decided to continue it. And it's facilitated by Tracy Barnes Priestley. So it's an hour, you sign in online, and there's a different topic each week that she focuses on. So consider doing that. So if you ever miss a brown bag, you're interested in that, you can always go to our OLLI YouTube page. So this is that YouTube. And if you went to YouTube and just type in OLLI Humboldt, it'll pop you up there if you can't type this whole thing in. So all of our previous classes that we record all of them. We post online for your viewing pleasure. If you have any questions, here's our information. You can always email us at olli@humboldt. Our phone number is on the screen. And we also have a Facebook where we post our events. Instagram we have as well, but we don't post very regularly there. So I'd recommend if you wanted to follow us, you can get onto our mailing list if you aren't already, and follow us on Facebook. Hey, are there any questions about OLLI in general before I hand it off to Jane?
Doesn't sound like it.
Great. All right. Jane Woodward, I hand it to you. Thank you.
And welcome, everybody. Delighted to have you here. And thank you, Julie. Julie is our new interim OLLI administrator. And we're very happy to have her here. She's been with the university for quite a number of years, so she knows the ropes. And the ropes are getting a little tight these days, along with the finances. We're very happy to have her. And I want to welcome Jazz Lewis, who's a muscle and exercise nerd and creator and owner of Intentional Fitness. He's been immersed in the exploration of the human body for over a decade. His journey and inspiration began, as did many other exercise professionals, with a massive injury and a life-changing experience, going through a rehabilitation process. This is where Jazz was introduced to the world of neuromuscular, that is brain to body, training. Since that injury, he's pursued a wide range of educational experiences revolving around movement, neuromuscular health, optimizing bodies, and building the best possible experience for his and all intentional fitness clients on their muscular health journey. He eats, breathes, sleeps, and lives for exploring, understanding, and improving the neuromuscular system. He feels so grateful for the opportunity to have met so many wonderful people through his journey to help his community thrive and flourish. Jazz, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you guys. I feel very grateful to have been asked to do this. So this is excellent. I will be presenting to you guys today a PowerPoint presentation and just diving into the intricacies of the neuromuscular system, what we can potentially do to make some immediate changes on our day-to-day experience. And so I'll just take you through a PowerPoint that I have set up here, just so I can get some kind of placeholders on my flow. Here we go. Get this thing up and running. Awesome. This is my first time doing a Zoom presentation. I usually do these in person, so this is going to be a little interesting for me. One thing I will say, I would love at some point, if it is possible, to have more of like a in-person hands-on, because I think it would be so much fun to be able to move and explore and kind of talk about what we're feeling from a sensational experience when we're actually doing some of this stuff. So I would love to go down that road if there's ever an opportunity for OLLI to do that too. So thank you for the awesome introduction. I did
As
kind
you
of
can propose a class any old time.
okay.
We'll have
Awesome.
them in the summer, so
Okay.
in the fall.
Well, okay, that's amazing. Yeah, just a couple things before we get rolling. The way I like to do presentations is definitely like a roundtable situation. I will have an opening for questions at the end of the presentation, but I think that it's really fun and exciting to talk about things as we go. If there's any questions that arise and there's something that's pressing that you want to ask, please feel free to type it or just blurb out anything like that. This is, for me, not a super formal situation. So I love dialogue. I love the back and forth. That's kind of what gets me excited and lights me up when doing these things. So I love hearing different perspectives and different thoughts, challenging ideas, all those things. Those are the things that get me excited to do these presentations. So please don't hesitate to jump in at any time if there's anything you guys want to pick apart. So good. Okay, here we go. An exploration into the magnificent world of the human body. So we're going to cover a few different topics today. The first, oh, let me get this thing out of my way over here. Sorry, guys. Shrink that down. Uh-oh. Sorry. Oh, no. I lost my PowerPoint. Did everybody lose the PowerPoint?
No, we see it.
We
I
see
can't.
it. No problem.
Do you have a tab on your screen that you have to click from the
Close
meeting
something
over
out.
to the
Slide
screen?
control. Oh no. Oh no. Hide meeting. Oh, there we go. Okay. Very good. There we go. Minimize. Okay, we're set. Okay. So we're gonna take a glimpse into the inner workings of the muscular system and you'll hear my standpoint on exercise. There are so many wonderful perspectives on exercise. Everybody has their different, place in this exercise continuum that we're working in. And it'll be fun to kind of delve into the way that we think as a muscular system specialist. That's kind of our label. And it is a little non-conventional and a little bit of an upstream thought process as far as how conventional physical therapists and personal trainers think about exercise. So we'll be talking about that a little bit today. So there we go. We'll be talking about our muscular health and the importance of doing specific things to maintain muscular health, and to keep us going and aging gracefully. So that longevity piece is very important. And then, like I said, the practical tools for aging with vigor. That's a big one. And I hope well, at the end of this, I will give you guys some things to go home and try on your own. They're pretty simple, basic little things, but things that people don't necessarily talk about as often. I mean, we all have our cardiovascular, we all have our muscular strength, we all have, the endurance ideas around utilizing our muscular system, but there's some things that get overlooked quite often, and so I'll share those with you, and we can explore those and talk about those a little bit today as well. Okay, any questions? We good to go? Good to go. Awesome. Okay, move this thing out of the way. There we go. So our agenda for the day. I'm going to give you guys a brief intro into who I am, just kind of how I built my process and my practice. Just talk a little bit about before I got into this field, my story before that. We'll delve into the importance of understanding what the neuromuscular system is, this idea of brain to body control, why it is appropriate to be intentional about your fitness, your health and fitness. A lot of times we just kind of go into exercise and go into stimulating our muscular system with this non-specific, non-intentional focus. And it's really important to have more of an intentional approach to fitness and health and conditioning our bodies to function optimally. So we'll talk about that as well. I'll give you guys a little bit of information on what we do here in our facility. We're definitely, like I said, a little bit different than what you would normally see in a physical therapy or personal training environment. There's not a lot of us on the planet right now. This is a pretty niche and specific field that we're in, and so it'll be fun to chat about that a little bit. And if you guys have any questions or anything, we can talk about that as well. We'll cover some topics: the difference between muscular control, muscular strength, and muscular endurance. Those three things are very important to differentiate between. We'll talk about pain. I think that there are many different perspectives around pain and many different ways to approach pain and treat pain and interact with pain in the body. And I think giving you guys a novel approach to thinking about that will help to maybe make sense of some things that you guys experience on a day-to-day basis. We'll talk about threshold stimulus and kind of the tolerances of our body and how our body functions in our environment. And we'll talk about all these fun things as well. So these are the kind of key systems that I think are very important to be stimulating on a regular basis. Like I said, in addition to your strength, your cardiovascular, your endurance, these things are the things that I've seen in my practice that have made such a significant impact on someone's muscular health, pain reduction, and they're very, very easy to tap into We just got to do them. So we'll talk about that as well. I like to call it like, we brush our teeth in the morning. You gotta floss your muscular system as well. So you got to stimulate your system and make sure it stays functioning as much as possible. And so that will give me kind of a line at the end of this to present to you guys a few things that you can do immediately after our presentation today, and start working on improving some of these things if you're not already working on them. So that is kind of the game plan for the day today. Any questions? Are we good to keep rolling? I think we're good. Seems like we're set for now. So I'll just give you guys a brief story about how I kind of came to be in the position I am and what I'm doing with my life. And then we'll talk quickly about our business, our facility, Intentional Fitness. That's our current location that we're in right now. It's a beautiful space at the top of 16th Street overlooking the bay across from Arcata High School. It's a lovely view from up here. So yeah, so in my early life, I got out of high school and thought I wanted to be an architect. Definitely helped me, I think, to understand biomechanics and how the body moves and how we load our systems. So I did 3 years of architecture, 2 years of business school, and then I had a traumatic ankle injury, which basically took me out of school for a while. And it was just warning, I'm going to show you guys a picture of it, so if you're squeamish, just beware. Yeah, so I went through physical therapy. I went through multiple rounds. It was such a significant injury that the PT wasn't really getting the job done for me. And so I kind of had to start looking around for different avenues of therapy. And I found muscle activation techniques. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that or familiar with that in Arcata. Muscle activation techniques was there was a business called True Motion Fitness, and they've been around for 10 or 15 years now. And so my mom actually forced me to go to these guys, and it was my first experience in the world of neuromuscular therapy, which is different than traditional physical therapy, in a sense that they're working on linking the brain with the usage of the muscles, not just addressing the symptom of the unwanted sensation or the symptom of the movement issue. And so they took a very interesting approach to a rehabilitation process. And for me, it worked really, really well. I was having a lot of trouble getting back on my feet. And after going to these guys for for 6 or 7 weeks, I was completely back to square one. So I was fascinated. I decided, oh, here we go. So here's the ankle injury that I had. I split my ankle at a 90-degree angle. It basically fell off my leg. So there was that. Sorry for the grotesque. I'll keep moving on there. But that was the trauma and the injury that I went through with that ankle situation. So yeah, it got me really interested in the world of neuromuscular therapy and training, and I decided to drop everything and go start flying to Denver, Colorado once a month, and I went through this MAT program, and that's really what got me uh, fallen in love with the biomechanics and movement sciences and kinesiology. So after that, I started stacking on a bunch more certifications. I started working with clients um, and then ended up returning back to California and Humboldt and went to Humboldt State University. I got a bachelor's degree in exercise science, kinesiology, emphasized in biomechanics. I got into the mechanics of the golf swing for a little while there. And then after Humboldt State, started working with clients and starting to build a process and a practice. So that was kind of the initial dive into the neuromuscular world. And I did MAT for quite some time, and then started running into some walls with MAT. It wasn't as complete of a process as I was looking for, and what I realized I was looking for was something that address the body from more of a systemic approach, not as much of an individualized joint by joint approach. And the key with understanding systemic approaches is that, they say, the elbow bone connects to the knee bone, or whatever that, however that saying goes. Well, that's very true, and it's very important to understand that when working with the human body. And so I found this program called the Muscular System Specialist Program, and that completely changed my perspective on the human body, changed my approach to interacting with clients, changed my approach to how I was assessing and progressing people. And it was heavily based around, critical thinking, challenging our biases and norms that we constantly are relying on in this industry. And so it really shook things up for me in a great way. And so yeah, I went through this MSS program about 7 years ago, and haven't looked back since. It's been a wonderful process. It's helped me to grow this business. It's helped me to get a team under me. I have a couple of pictures here. We're in the process of building a facility here in Arcata. We're building a 5,000 square foot, like, dream muscle nerd neuroscience exercise mecca here. So I'm very excited. We'll hopefully be in there in about 5 or 6 months, and if the city of Arcata lets us get through all the hoops that they're making us jump through. So anyway, very excited about that. And so yeah, that brought us to this new business, this new conglomerate collective of people. I created the brand Intentional Fitness, because I think that we need to be more intentional about our health and fitness. And yeah, we have a wonderful team of people that work under me, and it's just the funnest dang thing in the world to do every day. So that's a little bit about me, and we'll dive in now to our main event, the world of neuromuscular science and exploration. So just something I wanted to spark, pose a question to you guys. When you think about exercise and you think about being fit, what does that mean to you? And you're welcome if you guys want to chime in and answer, that's fine. If not, you can just kind of like let that settle in, and let that be something that you're thinking about and considering as we go through this talk today. So if no one has anything that they would like to chime in about, I'll keep rolling here.
I do have a question. Do you
Yes,
do a
please.
preliminary evaluation when somebody comes in as a new client to ask these questions and determine their level of fitness and what their goals
Absolutely.
are?
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question. Yes. We have multiple ways of looking into what level of fitness the client is currently at. We have a we have a 9-page health history questionnaire that we have them fill out. It's a psychological analysis, it's a physiological analysis, injury history. We look at disease, we look at surgeries, we look at the whole spectrum of their life, essentially culminating in this moment of us meeting with that person. And then we also do a full physical assessment of that person when we do our intake and our meetup. And I have some slides down at the bottom here today that I can kind of show you guys or explain to you guys a little bit more in detail about what we do with that. Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Love the questions. Yeah, so the idea here is kind of shifting the perspective on what fitness and what being healthy and what the demand of the body actually is. And so, you think about being fit as, like, you look at somebody and they're chiseled, or they can run forever, or they're slender. And the problem with that is those are ideals and it's not reality. And I think the the fitness industry is getting better and better at shifting that perspective, but still there's a long ways to go. And really, to me, what being fit means is being fit to do what that person needs to do with their lives. Being fit, for example, to hold their grandchildren, or being fit to go on a walk with their friend for 2 miles, or being able to get up and get down off the couch without pain. So we've kind of reorganized and reprioritized what we think about when we have somebody come in and be fit. My goal isn't to get every single person into powerlifting. My goal isn't to get every single person to run 20 miles. It's to get goal orientation around that person's life and what they need out of their life to enjoy it, and how do we get to that point. And so that's our perspective change around being fit. And I think that the more that our industry can kind of buy into that and understand that there shouldn't be norms, it should be specific and tailored to that person, I think we're going to be much better off as we go here. So yeah, being fit, I wrote this down here. It's a spectrum, right? So it's very important to understand where someone's at in their ideal fitness, where they want to be in their ideal fitness, and then, how do we resolve that tension to get them to that point? And then obviously, we need our cardiovascular health, we need our muscular strength, we need our muscular endurance, but I'm not going to expect a 92-year-old to run 20 miles. We might talk about having them do some walks throughout the day to get their heart rate up, and then let it come back down. And so tailored, specific, individualized, intentional is where we're at, and I think that's where the industry needs to go. So any questions on that, guys? Are we good to keep rolling? Good. Okay. So why is movement so important? Our bodies were designed to move. And it's fascinating to me. If you think about this from an evolutionary standpoint, I mean, we have a brain, we have a body, and the only way that our brain and our body actually survives is by putting food in its mouth and breathing. And if we can't move, we can't put food in our mouths. And so we have this very, very strong connection, and these fantastic and fascinating systems that are stimulated from movement that we don't even think about. And we'll talk about these more downstream, like anti-inflammatory properties, cancer fighting properties, just from movement-based activities. And it's fascinating to think about how simple movement is in terms of just doing things on a day-to-day basis, but the incredible qualities that intentionally moving can actually have on the body. So we are these incredible beings, and if we stop moving, it's not good. So we got to keep stimulating our systems. And there's lots of literature out there saying that even just a little bit of movement a day can be very, very beneficial for your body. So one thing that we'll talk about later today is this thing I call the daily warm-up. It's a generalized movement pattern. It's about 15 minutes, and you can do it daily, 15 to 20 minutes. And it essentially takes you through every single movement, every single available joint movement in the body. And so it's essentially covering you from head to toe, kind of priming and engaging and activating every joint in every range of motion that you can possibly do, and it gets you ready for your day. And I like to think about it like it's, you're flossing your neuromuscular system or brushing your teeth. It's just the same thing. We should be doing this daily. So I'll do a little preview of that later today. And then there's a video. There's actually a bunch of videos that I created for you guys to take with you at the end of this today that you can start playing around with and practicing. And they're very low stress, not high demand on the body, but really, really good to just get things moving. And we'll talk a little bit more about, being safe doing these as we go here today. So a couple other fun little facts here about movement and why it's so important. I talked about the cardiovascular, the increased muscular strength. I mean, this idea of longevity and movement is just huge. bone strength, optimizing bone strength by loading our systems, something that we absolutely should be doing. I mean, we should, my goal with my clients is to load their bodies with as much load as I can safely. And that is the one of the keys to stimulating bone growth. Is we know there's this kind of compressive nature to loading the bones that stimulates them, and also the muscles pulling on the bones helps to stimulate them as well. Obviously supports healthy managed weight. It improve working our muscular system improves posture and balance. It reduces risk of chronic disease. Breath training, it helps us to get more oxygen intake in, and then the stress reducers, the mood boosters. We sleep better when we exercise. It enhances brain capacity and function, concentration, increases the confidence and reliability of one's body when doing what we want to do with our lives. And it can help reduce symptoms of depression and help with neuroplasticity. So movement and exercise is pretty dang important, and I'm definitely an advocate for it. And it, like I said, the beautiful thing about it is it doesn't have to be the 2 hours of working out in the gym every day. We can intentionally set our focus on a few things daily that are really, really going to help to bolster the body. So any questions on that, guys? Can we keep going here? Good to go. Awesome. Okay. I did a deep dive here on some of the incredible things that exercise does to reducing our risk of cancer. It was really fun to go over this again. I was looking into this a couple years ago, and I just wanted to refresh myself. But it is pretty incredible what exercise can do to promote cancer reduction risk. So we have the reduction of inflammatory markers in the body. It balances our hormones out. It promotes natural killer cells, which are cancer killing cells. It lowers insulin. It slows abnormal cell growth. It helps with reducing the promotion of cancer causing carcinogens in the GI tract and the stomach. Um, it's so amazing how much exercise can contribute to this. And so, it's just one of those things that if we do a little bit of it, we're promoting a significantly healthier internal environment for our bodies here. And then immune function. It helps to boost our immune system. It gets our cells moving throughout our body more effectively, and that helps them to cover more ground if there's infection or viruses or things like that in the body. It stimulates the cell's ability to detect and destroy threats. It decreases the inflammatory markers. It's just there's just such interesting and amazing things that exercise does. So we have the regulation of cortisol levels, improves lymphatic flow, and obviously helps us to sleep better, which allows us to recover better. So it's just incredible. So those are a few interesting and fun facts for you guys. And so now I want to talk about the importance of understanding our neuromuscular system in relation to movement and exercise in general. So the big thing that kind of changed my perspective was this idea of mind to body and what that really meant, because a lot of times I think, and what I see within our practice, is that people really don't connect with their bodies very often, and that can be a pretty big deal, because when we don't connect with our bodies, we're really not experiencing our environment 100%. We can kind of get stuck in here and really just kind of neglect the sensory input and output equation going on there. And so, our brain is in constant communication with our body, and without the intentionalness of kind of tapping into our system as we move and go throughout our life, we kind of lose that bridging of our brain to our body. And so that's something that's super important to me to promote to my clients, and to talk to you guys about, is being more conscious, being more intentional with how we're using our bodies when we are doing an exercise, actually thinking about why we're doing it, thinking about what we're trying to accomplish, thinking about what we're trying to feel as we do an exercise or move or walk, or whatever it may be. And it doesn't mean you have to think about every step you take while you're walking with your friend, but when you're doing something like a machine or a squat or just a general movement, think about why you're doing it, what's happening in your body, and how it should feel. So the bottom line is, if you don't use it, you will lose it. So continuing to promote those established connections and trying to find and create new ones is super, super important. Any thoughts around that, guys? Good. Cool. Okay, so in order to understand how to appropriately nourish and optimize our neuromuscular system, we must first understand a few topics. And so we'll dive into these in the next 15 or so slides. We'll be talking about pain responses, the adaptation to stress and stimulus, stress thresholds, and this thing we call the allostatic bubble. And then we'll talk about control versus strength and endurance, and how those things differentiate, and why it's important to understand what control, strength, and endurance are. So here we go. A novel approach to understanding pain. So where do I begin here? So with pain, it gets tricky. And one of the reasons it's tricky is because there are so many different types of pain. And I'm not, what we'll be talking about on this slide is, various areas where the body experiences pain, but also the type of pain, right? There's searing pain, there's shooting pain, there's dull pain, there's achy pain, there's diffuse pain, there's pain that doesn't even make sense. And so we really have to understand, or at least try to understand, what the pain is, where it's coming from, why it's happening. And the fascinating thing is, a lot of times the pain might not be a local issue. It might not be coming from the place that you're actually feeling it. And this is one of the big differentiators between us and various other forms of therapy, is when you go to other forms of therapy, they're not saying all of them, but a good majority of them, when you go for a knee pain situation, you're probably going to be working on a knee, and it may not be a knee. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later, when we explore the idea of systemic versus local versus instability, and when it comes to pain responses there. So the thing I wanted to talk about on this slide is the various types of pain, as far as where they resonate or culminate from in the system. So we have local pain, and we could call this like a local pain in a knee, or yeah, let's go with a knee just for the fun of it here. So if it's a local pain response, it means you're feeling it in the knee. And if it's local to that area and it truly is a local pain issue, it could be something like a ligament tear, the muscles in the knee aren't working appropriately. Something in that area is sending signals to your brain saying, hey, something's going on here, something is wrong, we need to address this thing down here. And so we'll kind of call that one type of pain, local acute pain. And that's something like, for example, the acute component of this is like something where you like twist your knee and you're like, oh, that hurt. Or you bang your elbow, oh, that hurt. Touch a hot pan, oh, that hurt. Something like that. Then we have this local chronic pain, which is still a localized issue, but it's repetitive. It's over and over again. And the body doesn't know how to change the experience or change the information flow going up and down. And so this could once again be ligament issues. It could be overuse. It could be shearing. It could be an overstress on that tissue. It could be a weakness in that region. And so those kinds of pain, are local but long-term pain responses. And in those situations, we kind of need to figure out why that pain response is still being generated if there's no injury to that location anymore. So if there's no structural damage and there's no tissue injuries, why do we still have pain there? And I think this is the perspective shift here is people think that rubbing it and stretching it and doing all these things kind of passively to the pain might help it go away temporarily, but then the feedback loop kicks back on. And so what we do as muscular system specialists is figure out if it's that local region creating a pain response, if it's the brain interpreting the information inappropriately, which is creating the pain response, or if it's somewhere else that's creating the pain response in that location. I know this is getting a little heady here, so feel free to ask any questions if you guys have any right now. Then we have global systemic pain. And so this could be something where, and I was just saying this earlier, where another location could be moving poorly and that could be creating pain somewhere else because that system has to pick up excess range of motion because something else is moving in a way that it should be moving better or over moving. And so the body's going, uh-oh, we're creating overuse of this region, even though it's not injured. Let's generate pain to get them to pump the brakes and pull the car over with that check engine light. And so this is a very common thing that we see in our practice here is somebody, and we'll talk about this in a second, kind of in more detail, but somebody will have a pain response somewhere in their body. And then we work on another area and this pain response goes away. And they're like, what the heck? This is magic. I'm like, no, it's not magic. It's just your nervous system receiving information differently from the body, which then allows the brain to go, oh, I don't think there's anything going on there anymore. We don't have to send pain signals to stop you from moving and stop you from overusing that place because the brain goes, we know what we're doing here. The information flow makes sense. And it's fascinating to see this on a day-to-day basis with people because it's something that, someone goes, this is crazy. How is this possible that my body can do this? But this is the most complex computer I think we know, known to man. And it does some pretty wild things to make sense of computational issues. So that's our global systemic pain. And then this is, to me, the most fascinating of all the pains in the body. And I could cover more, but I'm just giving you guys kind of a general sense here of how we're thinking about pain. So this is so fascinating to me. I've seen clients and patients that don't have any localized issue mechanically, structurally, um, control issue, nothing going on in that location, but there is an injury that has occurred for years past, and the brain is still promoting signals of pain. And what's most fascinating about this to me is typically what we have is like we have a knee where the knee hurts and it sends signals to the brain. And technically, this is the most fascinating part. The knee hurting isn't actually the thing that hurts. Your brain sensing the information from the knee is actually where the pain is coming from. It's so interesting to think about that, but the brain is actually the thing creating the pain, not the knee. The information is coming from the knee to tell the brain pain. So anyway, that's just super interesting to me. But this is fascinating, seeing that somebody would have an injury and then years later the pain is still there because that feedback loop of the brain sending protection signals, sending protection signals to tell the body to stop using that joint or that limb is being promoted because it's caught in this protection feedback loop. And so sometimes we have to figure out ways to change the brain's output to the body, not just the sensory information going from the body to the brain. And so I like to explain this to clients as the hot pan theory. And this this relates also to just exercise in general as well. So I think this is a good way to kind of talk about these two things together. But the idea with the hot pan theory is basically if you touch a hot pan, you burn your hand, your brain goes, don't touch a hot pan again. And so, for maybe a few weeks, you go around the stove and you look and you make sure that the little knobs are off and you don't just grab the hot pan right away. Your body becomes cautious. It becomes a little resistant to moving quickly into whatever, pain response injury you experienced. And so, what we see with going back to some of these differences between what we do and what other modes of therapy do, um, we really honor the brain saying ouch, and we don't push into pain, because what we're doing when we push into pain and promote unwanted sensations like certain pain responses is we're promoting that pain feedback loop. And then what happens is you promote that pain feedback loop, and then that feedback loop becomes normalized. And now the brain associates pain with emotion that we're doing. And then you got a downward spiral, right? So, what we focus on doing, especially when somebody comes in from a rehabilitative standpoint, is we have them touch that cold pan a ton of times. We go, this doesn't hurt. This doesn't hurt. This doesn't hurt. You're okay. You're safe. We calm down this neural storm that's occurring, and get the body acclimated to movement again, and then we can start pushing the limits and making some more meaningful stimulus and stressors on the body. Yeah, Jane, go for it.
Um, I've always thought of it as you start with an acute pain, and that is a real feedback loop between the brain and your hand.
100%.
After that, it can become chronic pain, even though you don't have acute pain anymore. The nerve body response is the same.
Yep.
The nerve brain response. And it sets up a pattern. And so you have to break that pattern.
100%.
There, you can desensitize, which is what you were just talking about, by just actually going back and touching that area or working that area and saying it's fine, there's no problem. So the issue is, how do you go about desensitizing the areas where you have chronic pain? Because your brain has learned to respond to very minor touch when there's no hot there, but you've touched it, you worry about it, and your brain responds.
Yeah, I love that question. That's great. Yeah, you're like one step ahead of everything I'm doing here, which is awesome. So, we're actually going to talk about that as we go down here, how to address things like that and why they're happening. So let me see what the next slide. Yeah. So I mean, the idea here is we have this chronic pain response that's happening. And so one of the things that we have to do is understand why it's happening. And I think that's the number one thing, is to go, what's occurring here? Why is this signal being generated? And then how do we address it? So let me see. I don't know if I want to. I might be, if I start going down this road now, I might be repeating myself here in a little bit, which I'm fine with. But let me shelf that, and then I'll jump back in if I don't cover that. Okay, if that's cool with you. Okay, good. Let's see here. Well, just to answer your question, I can't help myself. So when we figure out where the pain is, and then we figure out why the pain is happening, what's fascinating about the brain and the body is that it could be as simple as stimulating an ankle, which creates enough sensory information change in the body to immediately turn that pain signal off, even though it was chronic pain. Jane, can I have a kind of a rebuttal question from you? I just want to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, it's eliminating the positive reinforcement for the pain.
Yes,
So
correct.
basically, for example, I have an issue with the muscle in one hip.
Yep.
So I do exercises every day to avoid pain.
Yeah.
It's pain avoidance.
What kind of exercises do you do?
Well, Pilates exercises.
Okay.
Uh,
So lots of hip flexibility, core activation, those kinds of things,
yes,
right?
yes, every
Yeah.
day, every morning.
It's wonderful.
I'm into pain avoidance.
Yes, we like that. So it's actually I'm loving that you brought up the hip thing because my example is actually specific to a hip. And I think it's going to be cool to delve into like more of the subtleties and the nuances of what that means. So this is going to be super fun to do that. Just like a brief little thing here, why understanding cumulative history and stress and injury is so important. So when we talk about injury history and we talk about pain, when we get clients in here, they come in and we have them fill out an injury history pamphlet, and they go, "Oh, yeah, I banged my head when I was 8 years old. It's no big deal. I kind of had whiplash in my head when I was eight. And, it was so long ago. It's not a big deal. And it actually, historically, the further away the injury, the more systemic, systemic impact it's going to have on the body. And I love the example of the tree that has been bent. I go snowboarding up in Mount Shasta, and some of these trees are beautiful, but it's so interesting how, the snowpack will hold them down and then they'll start growing differently. And that's the same idea with this historical injury process is our body is going to get banged in the head, and then it's going to have a protection feedback loop around that injury, and your body is going to start doing things differently long term because of those injuries. And so a lot of those initial injuries that we see with people, that's kind of the epicenter of where their issues kind of start. And then we see them kind of spill out from there. So don't disregard your injury history. Even if you rolled your ankle 20 years ago, it's still important to kind of bolster and get the ankle moving cleanly so that your brain goes, hey, I'm safe down there. I know what I'm doing. I have control over my body. So that's just a quick little thing there. Um, so yeah, and this is kind of diving into the same ideas revolving around um, the pain and the positive adaptation versus the negative adaptation, and finding that sweet Goldilocks zone. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to, when we work with people or when I'm training, or when anyone that I'm talking to is being educated on movement in general, we want to figure out how to create positive adaptation, obviously not negative adaptation. And the big idea here, especially when someone's in a kind of a pain storm, is to not generate more pain here. And so what we see when we have positive adaptations from movement, we see increased movement, mobility, strength, control, output, and decreased pain. Obviously, on the other side of that, we have decreased mobility, strength, stability. We see compensation patterns occurring, and then we see that increase in pain. So just some things to think about. We're going to cover this a little bit more in detail in a little bit here. Um, so, like I said before, the day of no pain, no gain is over. This is definitely something that we embody as far as not allowing to perpetuate pain responses. So this is kind of an interesting way to think about pain in another light. So what we typically see here. So this is where things get really interesting. To me at least. So our bodies kind of deal with three main types of pain. There's this novel pain that we see with and I'm talking about specifically with movement here. So we see this pain where if the brain doesn't know what to do and how to move the joint, it can send a little warning signal going, ooh, don't do that. There's a little pain that's going to happen there. And it's almost like a safety pain response. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe we can play with this as a group here. And you know, obviously if you have a safe environment and you're not concerned about your shoulder, I like to use a shoulder because sometimes we don't necessarily have the best range of motion in our shoulders. And so the idea here would be with this novel pain, if you bring your arm out and your shoulder's not used to moving and you lower it down, you might get a little bit of pain. And if you let your brain and your body rest for a second and let your brain interpret what occurred there at the joint, and then you do that same movement again and the pain isn't there, then what we call that is a control issue. What I mean by that is your brain didn't know what was going on there or didn't understand the stimulus or couldn't tolerate the stimulus. But then as soon as it figured out this connection, the pain goes away. And so that's kind of our first type of pain. And we love interacting with this kind of pain because what it means is that we're creating new connections from the brain to the tissue and to the joint. And we can now strengthen that connection, which can then improve the movement qualities in the shoulder complex or whatever joint we're working on there. Now, the next type of pain is a little more of a yellow flag, which is repetitive pain. So, for example, we do the arm thing, the pain happens, we sit here, we don't do anything else, then we go back and it happens again, and then it happens again. And I'm going, okay, that shoulder joint is creating pain every single time we do that motion. That is not a normalized control issue, not an easy control issue to address. It could be something from a general strength or stability issue. It could be a systemic instability issue, and so that takes a little bit more thinking and a little bit more energy output from the client and from myself to figure out how to resolve a pain response like that. And now the last pain, and this is the big red flag where we really need to figure out what's going on, is the arm out to the side. Pain shoots into the neck, the wrist, some other crazy thing. Their ear starts ringing, and that's definitely something either nerve related or structural. And so that's where we kind of get into this cautionary phase of our assessing and working with clients where we go, okay, I'm going to try some stuff, but you know, keep in mind this might be means to refer you. This might be rationale to refer you out to somebody to you know get some imagery done or look into it in a different way. But we see all the time we start stabilizing different areas of the body, the traveling pain goes away as well. So it's not always the end of the world, but those are kind of the three types of pain that we typically see and interact with from a movement-based standpoint. Now, this doesn't include just like the general aches that don't come from movement, and we're going to talk about those here in a bit as well. Any questions from anybody, guys? How are we doing here? Just wanted to check in. Maybe some thumbs ups if we're good or something like that. You good to go? Enjoying this? Okay. All right. Oh, we got a chat. Here we go. Yes. Awesome question. Somebody asked, what is your approach to arthritis? So arthritis is really, really interesting to me because arthritis is structural, right? So that's something that's occurring at the joint, and I'm not a surgeon. There's nothing I can do about the arthritis. Now, the interesting question is, what can we do about pain that comes from arthritis? And so a lot of the time people think that those two things have a direct relationship with each other. If you have arthritis, you're going to have pain, and that's not true. I have a lot of clients that have pretty significant arthritis that have no pain anymore. And so the interesting thing is the joint has arthritis and the brain senses this kind of structural uh, mechanical hindrance to the body, and it goes shut it down. And so the brain starts saying, hey, there's some stuff going on here. Let's limit motion to protect whatever's going on here so we don't have some of these like compressive forces or overactive ligament shearing actions that could be happening. Now, the interesting thing is when I start working on those arthritic regions and restore normalized joint function and normalize tissue activation to those joints, the arthritic pain goes away. And so I'm not saying this is 100% of the time, but I see this very, very frequently where we're dealing with our arthritic joints and we start moving that thing better, and we start implementing control and stability based training in those zones, and the person never has arthritic pain um, from that point going forward. But they have to keep, the problem is, or I guess the key or the kicker is, they have to keep reinforcing those joint movements. They constantly have to be stimulating those joints at least daily to reinforce upstream. Hey, keep using this tissue because I know everything wants to shut down in this region and kind of turn off. So the one thing I have seen with arthritic pain, which is very interesting to me, is I have seen a pretty strong connection between barometric pressure changes and arthritic pain. And the only reason I can say that confidently is because I track every single day that our clients come in. I take notes. I write down their subjective reporting from pain, how they're feeling. And very, very frequently, I see that there are spikes in subjective complaints around the arthritic regions with the barometric pressure changes. But as soon as things normalize, the pain goes away. And so for those scenarios with arthritic pain, there's nothing we can do about it. But the movement-based pain responses that are occurring in those regions, we can definitely do something about. Was that a helpful answer to that question? Pressure changes in the weather system changes. So like when a pressure system comes in and it gets kind of like, you feel that like muggy, kind of heavy, deep, almost gonna rain uh, feeling outside, that's when we see those changes occurring. So it was such a trip. I really, in the beginning when this was happening, I'm like, you're kidding me. Really? Like, no, really? And then I started tracking it. Barometric. Thank you. Thank you. That's what I meant. Thank you. I am not a weather scientist. um, but it's really interesting to see how that occurs. Oh, that's so good. Okay. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, yeah. So if you have any other questions, we can keep rolling, guys. We're good to go. Okay. I think we're good to go. Yeah, good. Okay. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so this is kind of the idea with the addressing the causes, not the symptoms idea here. And this is the kind of this is gonna be fun to talk about the hip versus what else it might be. So we're gonna use gait cycle as an example. So just walking as an example here. And the idea here is, let's just say, or hypothetically, we have pain and unwanted sensations in the hip while we walk. So what people typically do is go, do I have arthritis? Do I have structural damage? Do I have tissue damage? Is something going on? There's something in my hip. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it constantly hurts. And so we we have different ways of thinking about this, right? And so when we look at somebody, we go, is it a mobility issue? And in fact, and where could that mobility issue be coming from? So is it local? Is it in the hip? Or could it be more of a systemic or a global impact? For example, could it be a knee or an ankle, or is it actually a hip issue? And so what we start doing is we start looking mechanically at all the other pieces of the puzzle to make sure, if it is in fact a hip issue and it is a movement issue in the hip, let's address that. But let's not just keep beating this hip and creating pain if that's actually not where the epicenter of the issue is. And so I'm just giving an example here of something that we can use as as an example of where we sometimes find the breakdown coming from, and that's in the foot or the ankle. Just a little side note here. One of the things I'm giving you guys today is kind of a systemic assessment tool slash movement tool that you can do on a daily basis to tease out any kinds of breakdown or movement-based issues that you might be dealing with, which could then help your hip pain. So the long story short here, we look at something, we go, oh my gosh, the ankle might be the issue here because the hip's moving great, you're getting pain, but we see that your ankle is super, super limited in motion. And so we go, let's exercise this ankle. And so we can exercise it a few different ways. We can exercise the stuff that moves the ankle, and we can stretch the stuff that is supposed to release on the ankle. With our practice and the way that we work, we definitely prefer to stimulate the tissue that moves the joint versus stretch the stuff that lengthens. And one of the big reasons behind that is we're trying to create a feedback loop of control from the brain to that tissue that's supposed to work effectively in the demand or the task that we're asking for. And so an example of the reason that pain could be occurring here is because, for example, if the ankle isn't moving very well, the hip has to pick up excess forces that are being distributed up into the joint that should be being distributed in the ankle. And this is a perfect example of why pain doesn't always come from the location that it's coming from. And so what I've seen in the past with these kinds of scenarios is we give somebody a nice easy ankle exercise, and all of a sudden their hip pain goes away, and that's the end of that. So we kind of look at this systemically and see how we can impact the body from a movement and control based standpoint like this. Oh my gosh, we're running out of time here. How many slides? We got a lot. Okay, I'm gonna keep cruising, guys. The idea with this addressing causes, not symptoms. I love the idea of the tire alignment analogy. This is the idea that like you keep replacing your tires, they keep wearing in the same place, and this is like, I get a knee replacement, I still have pain, like what the heck's going on? Well, it might not be the knee that's the issue. It might be that the hip's not tracking correctly, which is creating a shearing force on the knee. And so the idea here is don't just keep replacing your tires, but actually check your alignment to make sure everything's functioning optimally, not just the loudest thing that's yelling at you there. So there's one more type of pain that I wanted to talk about here, and this is systemic instability. And the big thing here, and I see this a lot, people come in and they go, I'm in pain sleeping, I'm in pain sitting. And that's a serious serious issue going on there. So this is non-movement based pain. And the biggest thing that we see here with non-movement based pain is foundational breakdown or foundational stability issues. And a lot of times we see this with um, uh, respiratory deficits, not being able to breathe very well, um, uh, diminished pelvic floor control and stability, and then also factors such as occupational stressors and postural issues, which could be contributing to the pain responses that are occurring from not moving, not pain from moving. And so this is usually we get like the dull, achy, long lasting kind of always trying to stretch and get out of those spots. So if our body's unstable, it's going to cause a storm in the body. And I think, yeah, this is something I like to talk about. And this is one of the main reasons why pain does occur when we have internal stability issues. It's the idea of the standing on ice or walking on ice idea. So what happens when we stand on a sheet of ice? We step on the ice, and if we don't have grippy shoes, our body freezes and tightens. And so that's an external instability, which is creating a tightening effect internally in our system. And so if our system is sensing internal instability, it's going to turn on a bunch of tightening mechanisms to try and protect itself. But really what's happening is the instability in our body is creating the tightness, which is creating the pain responses. So we keep stretching, and we have to keep on stretching because we're never addressing the actual instability issue. And I'm going to give you guys some exercises to do to address these things, which will help you just to kind of keep maintaining your neuromuscular health. Okay. Here we go. How we doing, guys? Everything good? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to just briefly cover these ideas regarding allostasis, thresholds, and stimulus. I think I'm just going to, let's see here, read some of these off to you guys. Allostasis. Allostasis is essentially, yeah, I'll just read it off. The process of maintaining stability in the internal environment by making adaptive changes in response to perceived or actual stressors. It's a dynamic process of adaptation where the body changes its physiological parameters to meet specific demands. So basically, allostasis is the body's ability to take an excursion and return home with positive adaptation or no negative changes. What I mean by that is we have homeostasis, which is our kind of current set point where we're just in our norm non-stress state where we have all of our mechanisms operating all the time. And then when we take an excursion and we, lift a weight up or we go on a walk, allostasis is our body's ability to return back home without issues. And so allostasis is a very important part of adaptation and ensuring that our body stays safe and doesn't get injured. Now the problem is we can go too far and push past a threshold, and then we return home in a negative state. And so we'll talk about this and what we think about here, and this is going back to the question of how we assess our clients when they come in. We actually calculate this thing called allostatic load. And you guys you'll have the PowerPoint presentation to look over. So we're running out of time here. So I want to make sure I get to everything as much as possible, but you can kind of look through some of these things. But the idea here with allostatic load is it's kind of a historical cumulative load on the system, which allows or impacts the ability for our bodies to tolerate stress. And so there's tons and tons of factors that contribute to this allostatic load. And based on our allostatic load, we then understand how much stress and stimulus we can tolerate when we take a client on and work with them. And so, yeah, I encourage you guys, if you're interested, to kind of look through this. But the three main types of allostatic load: physiological, psychological, emotional load. Those are kinds of the big the big things that impact and contribute, along with injury history and things like that. So we're always factoring in these things as we explore and figure out what's going on with the person that we're working with. And so this is kind of another example of the allostatic load and taking excursions. So this is the idea of thresholds. And I'll just use a dumbbell, like a bicep curl as an example, because I think that it's kind of an easy, straightforward way to think about this. So like, let's say we have a 82-year-old person, and I want to start stimulating their arm to get stronger so they can lift their grandkid up. Now, we have an idea of their allostatic load, and we have an idea of their ability to take a stress excursion, which would be curling that dumbbell up. Now, the idea here is if we give them a 50-pound dumbbell to curl, that is going to blow right past their current systemic threshold or their ability to tolerate stress and create injury. And so what we've done there is we've overshot and overstressed their system, and they come back to home maladapted or with a negative adaptation. Now, if I give them a 1-pound dumbbell, it might not do anything. It might keep them too far into their bubble, and then we're not stimulating them enough. And so we have to find this Goldilocks zone, which allows for the system to be stimulated appropriately to create ideal, appropriate adaptations in the body. And so understanding stress and stimulus thresholds is very, very important for us. And then also for you guys to kind of keep that in mind as you're going about your days and understanding, yeah, okay, I went on that walk. Yeah, I went for a 5 mile walk today, and I'm like, oh man, this thing kind of hurts. Like then you go, oh no, my knee's injured, but I don't hurt when I go on a 2 mile walk. So maybe what I'll do is I'll start going on 2 mile walks and then add another quarter mile or half mile to the walk and build my threshold or build my tolerance versus just blowing right through my fatigue profile there. So does that make sense to you guys? I think that, yeah, that might hit the nail on the head with this. So any questions? Are we good? Okay. So that's exactly what I was saying here with this positive negative adaptation component. And we can think about this in terms of time, duration, reps, rest intervals, and the whole gamut there. So yeah, I think I'm going to keep rolling here because I want to get to some of these other areas. Post-activation potentiation is fascinating. It's how we stimulate and create micro adaptations in the body. You can do this as simply as, like I showed you earlier, lifting your arm and then dropping it down and feeling a little pain, and then lifting it up and having no pain. It's a neurological phenomenon that occurs that actually bolsters the integrity and the output of the muscular system. It's fascinating. It's super awesome. Yep, I'm going to keep rolling. Okay, so the control versus strength versus endurance idea. So I'm just going to quickly touch on this, and we've kind of talked about it already, I think, a little bit. But the idea is when we look at the body, we're looking at these three factors from a muscular output standpoint. And control is number one for us to look at. If the body doesn't have control, if the brain doesn't know how to use the body very well, we're not going to see very ideal changes with strength and endurance. And so the idea of gaining control over your joint actions and the usage of the muscles, which is kind of the intentionality component, is super important for seeing an optimized body to then start stressing with strength and endurance training. So I'm going to leave it at that. Just, sidebar, we must learn to control our bodies in addition to building strength, endurance, and cardiovascular health. So they're all very important, but the idea of control is super important. And what I mean by that is conscious joint action movements, utilizing the muscles to control the joint appropriately, not just flailing around. And so we got to understand what that means. And I'm actually going to be doing courses on this when we move into our new facility, and it's going to be super fun to look into that stuff. Okay, so the idea with stimulating or the threshold of stimulus on the body. So when we get somebody in, we think about, I love this analogy of the seed to the tree. So they're a seed. We have to nurture the seed. We have to promote it with low stress stimulus. I'm not going to dump gallons of water on this seed. I'm going to give it a little bit of water, a little bit of light, stimulate it, get it going, and then move it into a bigger pot. And then we're going to be putting a little more water, a little more stress. There might be a little bit of wind blowing. And so the body gets stimulated that way to start building on this growth. The roots are getting deeper. The tree is starting to grow. And then we move the body and we go, hey, this body is doing really good. We're moving it into a higher stress environment like the forest, where there's lots of wind and critters and people and things. And this is a hardened system that is integrated and completely systemically stable. And so that's how we think about taking a client from low stress to higher stress, and understanding where they need to start is super important. And like I said, the injury history and the allostatic load and our assessment is how we figure that out. So I'm going to wrap up here in a few, guys. I hope you're enjoying this and hanging in with me. So this is our process at Intentional Fitness. I'm going to jump this here. This is kind of our manifesto, our mission statement. But you guys can read that later. And just to kind of give you the heads up on our demographic, basically anybody with a muscular system we work with. We have clients from 12 to 95 years of age. We have the aging populations. We have rehab clients, stroke patients, general pop, weekend warriors, humans looking to optimize their body, people looking to be pain-free. So that's kind of we're we're the one-stop shop if you have a muscular system. Um, we're kind of a hybrid model between a physical therapist and a personal trainer. And we have, like, as you know now from me yammering at you guys for an hour and 20 minutes, we have a very comprehensive approach to exposing and treating neuromuscular breakdown, biomechanical dysfunction in the body by using the systems that revolve around exercise, physiology, nutrition, psychology to optimize that body. So when we take clients in, and I'm getting close here, guys, we have these baseline tolerance assessments that we look at. We look at health history, we look at various movement patterns, and then we have to think about how we address and progress their system. And I think I've kind of summed up how we do it and how you guys can do it by understanding where your set point is and where to go from there is the the challenge, and the idea is prescribing appropriate exercise and stimulus is the key. And so like Jane, she probably tolerates Pilates super well, and it's probably not doing anything negative to her system, although the hip pain is a concern, and I'm going, why is she still in pain? Is that stimulus too much for her system? I've had plenty of clients that have had both experiences. So understanding that threshold and the appropriate stimulus to create positive adaptations is very, very important when working with a client. And then building upon those thresholds, bringing the sapling to the forest and stimulating it more effectively. That's the key there. Um, so to talk about kind of our assessment process, the things that we look at this is our initial assessment. We look at weight distribution, vitals in the body, circumferences. We're looking for um, innervation issues or nerve impingements. We look at posture, range of motion, respiratory excursion rate. So we're looking at all this stuff and we're thinking about all these things that could be impacting the body or that person. And this is kind of our baseline. How do we figure out where to start with this person? And then once we work these things out, the posture, the range of motion looks good, their control, their output looks good, they're breathing well, check, everything is good. Then we move them into the forest and we look at systemic load, gravity induced load. So less like table range of motion therapy based stuff and more strength, endurance, movement, mechanical, grosser motions. And that's kind of going to give us an idea of, someone comes in, they go, man, my back hurts when I'm sitting and doing nothing, but I really want to ride a bike. And so we got to go, okay, let's figure out how to fix your back pain and get things balanced there. And then, oh, there's this other thing, this bike riding thing. Well, these are probably going to be fairly different from a demand standpoint. Let's get this back pain fixed. And then once you're stable, let's start pushing the limits a little bit and seeing where you break down or if you break down in a bike riding scenario. And so there are two parts to this stress stimulus continuum that we're working on here. And so the idea here is we're looking at creating calculated, thought out, targeted plans. This is what our crazy report of findings and assessments look like. We take someone through a 3-hour assessment, full biomechanical body assessment. It's the most thorough assessment on the planet, I think, from a movement and control standpoint. And then we produce a report of findings and give people kind of direction on where they're going from that point forward. So that's what we do. The idea is create tailored exercise prescription, fit the exercise to the person, not the person to the exercise. You don't want to try and shove a square in a circle hole, so in a round hole. So, in my 12 years, oh my gosh, I have 5 minutes left. Here we go. In my 12 years of experience in this field, there are definitely 5 things that I've found that are quick and easy fixes to improving control, improving mechanics, improving just general pain reduction. And that is breath training, pelvic floor training, being intentional with this movement pattern called the daily warm up, ankle training, and gait training, and then intentionally tapping into our less targeted systems. Oh, hold on. Cost payment options. Oh my gosh, I would love to chat with you more about that. I really want to get to the end of this, but if I have my contact info down at the bottom if you guys want to reach out and we can chat. I'd love to. I just want to get these last couple things um, out to you guys, and I just wanted to let you guys know there are videos of each of these that I recorded for you on the PowerPoint. And so you can watch these, and if you have questions, you can reach out to me and we can chat about them a little bit more. Disclaimer: cardiovascular conditioning, muscular strength, and endurance, um, and meditation are also very important. I just wanted to cover the specifics on neuromuscular at this point from a movement-based standpoint. So let me click on this, keep it going. So the pelvic floor, number one thing. Um, I see a lot of instability in the pelvic floor. Sarah Landis, she just did a presentation on this the other day. It is so freaking important to keep our pelvic floor going. My perspective on the pelvic floor, I looked at the anatomy and the functionality of the pelvic floor. There's this incredible sheet of muscle that sits on the bottom of our sit bones there and wraps around the bowl at the bottom, and it needs to be able to contract and pull in. And I have an awesome video for you guys on this. You can click on this button here when you get the PowerPoint presentation. But the idea is the pelvic floor should be pulling in, and you should be feeling the spine elongating. And what that does is it decompresses the spine and actually puts your body in a better position to function and do work more effectively. So I'm actually I've created courses for all of these. And when we move into the new facility, we're going to be providing courses on all of these if people didn't want to become clients of ours. So I want to try and provide the community with as much information on these things as possible. So pelvic floor is a big one. Respiratory mechanics, our shoulders, our posture, our spine, our neck, our hips all respond to the control and capacity of our respiratory system. We don't understand that we have a diaphragm that moves so much. We have ribs that move so much, and we should be able to move them and use them. Also, from a stress response standpoint, it's super important to be able to move the diaphragm. It's also super important to be able to breathe through our chest and contract the muscles that attach into the rib cage, because our shoulders attach to our rib cage, and our shoulders can actually be experiencing pain because of rib cage stability issues. So there's the control and stability component of breath training. And then there's also the oxygen intake component issue that I see a lot of people have, where they're not breathing very well and they're getting migraines or strain responses in their system because of lack of oxygen. So I wish I could touch on these a little more. There was so much I wanted to cover. I can't believe the time flew by so quickly here. Um, the daily warm up, this is a general movement pattern from a program that I went through called Functional Range Conditioning. The idea with this is you're taking your body through every single possible joint range of motion that you can possibly take your body through. The idea is there's the movement itself, so like a moving of the elbow, but then the idea of using the muscle to actually move the joint. And that's the intentionality component of this daily warm-up exercise program. And then the cool thing about this daily warm-up program is you can use it as a diagnostic tool every morning to go, how's my neck moving? Oh, that didn't feel good. And then you can kind of use potentiation to gently coax it into moving better by not generating pain in those movements. And your body will adapt and start responding more positively to the movement pattern. And over time, your body will be acclimated to using those muscles again. It's amazing. It's beautiful. So there's that. There's a video. It's a 20-minute video. I take you through every single joint range of motion you can possibly go through. Be safe with this one. Just, stay within your means as far as how well or how much you move, just to not injure yourself. Ankle and CPG training. So this is various ankle and foot stabilizing motions and movement patterns. This is super important because the things that go on us as we age are our calf and tibialis anterior, which is essentially the muscles that help to lift our foot up to get so we don't get the toe drag, and then the muscle that propels us and pushes us forward as well, which helps to drive the system and not kind of drag us and pull us through our day-to-day life. So this is a really, really good thing to just stimulate the ankle and foot. It's a seated activity that you can do. And then the last one, this is the weird stuff. We don't understand how important our facial muscles and mechanics are. We have a tongue, a jaw, eyeballs, and facial expressions. And as we age, we tend to use these less and less and less. And what this can do is create a serious effect on our excitability of our nervous system. And so by stimulating these things and making sure that we have appropriate jaw mechanics and tongue mechanics and facial mechanics and ocular mechanics, it keeps our body kind of alive and alert and functioning as ideally as possible. Not to mention also that the jaw is directly connected to the neck zone, and the jaw can heavily impact the way that the neck moves, and as well as the tongue. So there's 4 videos here that you can click on to watch those as well. Final thoughts from me, guys. Thank you if you're still here. Thanks for sticking around. The body is the most advanced and incredible engineering marvel on this planet. It is our temple. It is our home. Give it love, give it grace, nourish it, and treat it kindly. And even if it's just a little bit every day, keep moving your body. That's what I have for you guys. Thank you so much for your time. That was a heck of a journey there.
Yeah, you got a lot into that time and space.
I
really
tried, man. I tried.
I wanted to mention that if you want to send the PowerPoint to me or to Ollie or both, people
Absolutely.
can contact either of us to get a copy.
Perfect. I'll send it to you. And this is a list of the courses that we're going to be covering at the new facility that we're moving into as well. So,
Yeah, I do think people at some point would kind of like to get a price list or some concept of what it costs to get engaged, but I guess we can contact you separately.
yeah, that's something I'd love to, chat with. The thing is we kind of work with people's, where they're at and what they're dealing with and everything like that. So, yeah, that would anyone that's interested, I'd be more than happy to chat with you guys on the phone. Let me see what we got here. How do we get a copy? Oh, yeah, we'll send you guys a copy of that PowerPoint. And then this is, sorry, and this is my contact info here as well.
Great.
So it'll be in there. And I'll put my phone number in there as well so they can have that too. So.
And I want to thank you all for coming today and let you know that we go on next Monday with an overview of the Eel River Restoration and Conservation Plan, and what's going on with the Potter Valley project. It's being decommissioned and to restore the salmon, steelhead, and lamprey access to over 300 miles of river blocked by dams for the last 100 years.
Yes.
So there's a lot to discuss. You'll be hearing from the experts. So thank you so much for participating. And Jazz, please do send us PowerPoint so we can send it out. Or anybody can obviously contact you to get a copy as well. But it will be the video will be online, the website, or on
Perfect.
YouTube.
I'll send that to you right afterwards here.
That's wonderful. Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful day. It's gorgeous out. And this is a nice new way of thinking about exercise and self-maintenance.
Yes, that's the important part. Exactly.
Yeah. We want to grow healthy.
I think we got some. I would love to have a copy as I missed some of it. Absolutely.